Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webcast. At Asia Society Texas, we believe in the strength and beauty of diverse perspectives and stand in solidarity with all people threatened by racism and violence. We trust in the power of art, dialogue, and ideas to combat bias, and we remain dedicated to welcoming all. Thank you so much for making time in your evening to join us. We are looking so forward to hearing from the artists Preetika Rajgariah and Stevie Spurgin so that they can share with us their insights and their projects as part of the Artists on Site series at Asia Society Texas. We're also delighted to be joined by my co-moderator, Brandon Tall-Harris, who was part of the first series of Artists on Site. So a very informed perspective that Brandon can share with us tonight as well. In terms of the structure of the evening, both of the artists will do a short presentation of some of their work, and then we'll jump into the conversation with the four of us, which we invite you all to be a part of in the audience. We'll be taking your questions through the chat in both YouTube and Facebook, depending on what platform you're tuning into. And you can ask those questions throughout. You don't have to wait and save them for the end. We'll incorporate them as we go. Just two notes for scheduling. I do hope everyone's free to join us this Thursday evening at Asia Society Texas in person for the closing reception for this Artists on Site Series 2. And also be aware that Sunday, the 12th, is your last day to be able to see the spaces in person. That's the last day of the series, which is hard to believe that it's already here, but we hope that you'll have time between now and then to come in and see things in person, because that's really an opportunity you can't miss. We'll also be putting the bio details for all three of the panelists in the chat so you can learn more about them, follow them on social, and do a deeper dive into their websites and learn more. But without further ado, I'd love to welcome Preetika to begin tonight and share her insights with us.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope everyone had a good Labor Day weekend. I know I'm still recovering a little bit, so thanks for bearing with me today. I will share, today I want to share some of my past video performance works, because I've been specifically working on performance and photo and video at my time at Asia Society during this Artists on Site residency. So I can go ahead and, yeah, okay, thanks, Bridget. But basically, a quick, before I start sharing pictures, I do work in a lot of different mediums. Most of my background started in painting and 2D works, but that quick over the past 5 to 6 years, I've really expanded my practice into installation, sculpture, and then performance as well. Basically anything that helps me tell the stories that I want to tell. And for me, primarily my work, it's all driven by my personal narrative, which as a Indian American immigrant, I came to this country when I was younger, but I was born in New Delhi, India. And so growing up here in Houston in a very specific demographic of pretty low diversity, as you know, primarily white people in Jersey Village is where I grew up. A lot of my work stems from that that experience of kind of navigating different worlds when I was in different spaces, and how that felt and how it affected me, and how I kind of ask questions and things about that, different cultural experiences, et cetera, et cetera. I will share my screen now. Okay. And I'm gonna start not with that. Okay, these pieces they're photos from several years ago, but it was my first experience with using my own body, not painted. Truly making these photos was for a performance class that I was taking at the time in graduate school, and I really started playing with how my body directly inserts itself in my experience. And I feel like, well, it has to be my body because I am speaking from my narrative. So for me, my body is very important. The first one on the left is called Bandage. The second one is called Dot Not Feather. And the third one is called Adorn. So these are some different themes that automatically from the titles you might kind of pick up on. Adorn, the last one being about, of course, adornment, what women do to present as beautiful. And that doesn't stop at just like jewelry and additions, but also, as we know, it includes things like hair removal, like, you know, all these extremes, maintenance. And I'm kind of really interested in that. So beauty and standards for beauty, not even in India where, but also like what East and West versions of that. So that's kind of an interesting point there. Dot Not Feather, the one in the middle, those are all bindis that I've stuck to myself. When I was growing up, I just like to share it because I in the North and other parts of the country, like people haven't heard this, so depending on where you are, whenever, of course, like immigrants and people of color often get asked, like, what are you when you're little and in school? Because kids can be kind of, you know, we all know they can be kind of mean to each other sometimes, or whatever. So that's a common phrase you grow up hearing, like, what are you? Or I grew up hearing. And I would say it was Indian, and often the next question was dot or feather, and literally like that was like it. So that's where that piece is from. Clearly dot, not feather, but I like playing with that little point of, maybe not tension is the right word, but where Indian and Indian overlap. When we're talking about Native Americans versus Indians, I mean, there's all sorts of confusion there, and I find that kind of a fun place to hang out. First one is called Bandage, and it's made up of scraps of saris, and kind of was my first interest in like bandage as support, but also as healing, but also as suffocating, and culture, how it can be, it's not all exoticized and fun. I mean, it can be, it's a real love-hate relationship sometimes, is what I'm trying to say when it comes to navigating cultural differences and assimilation and things like that. Okay, I'm gonna move on to a couple video clips. I'm just gonna let the videos play for a little bit, each one. I won't let them all go for their whole time. But. So here I am placing sindoor in my forehead, which is used in Indian wedding ceremonies. And that's gonna keep accumulating. The piece is titled, How About Now? And the full video is about 22 or 3 minutes. But I'll click ahead. And sindoor is a turmeric-based powder. And the groom basically places it in the bride's hairline when during as part of the wedding ceremony. It's like the big climax. The kiss of sorts. My Denzel moment with the tear. I'll go to the next one. So that was super short, but this piece was shot in a grain silo in the Midwest, where I put turmeric, the sindoor on the ground and created this amazing audio from. It started off really, the stamping was much slower, and it kind of builds up and accumulates. And I used to, these dancing bells that are on my ankles are actually used in Bharatanatyam dance, which is something else I did growing up for a majority of my youth and teenage years. And so that's how that video came together. It's called Indian American Indian. Again, playing on that elusive space. So I'll turn the buzzing down. But in this piece, I'm clearly shaving my head. It was for the first time. Again, I have a big body of work that's all related to the hair industry and the hair trade amongst people of color, especially brown and Black women. And so this was a video performance that is part of that series. And the biggest thing for me is that a lot of hair is sourced from Asian and South Asian countries to be used in Hollywood or to be used for wigs or weave. And the thing that I try to kind of question is like why women participate in this like billion-dollar industry, like whose standard are you trying to uphold? Why do and that of course has several layers, and it's a very big conversation, but just to give you like a little bit of a touch of that. And then the last one, let's see, I'll do this one. This was a performance from Women and Their Work a couple years ago where I had the audience members that you can see stack yoga mats on my body. There's about right under 90 mats that have been placed on me. So this is the emergence at the end of that. And we'll get more into the yoga stuff later. So anyways, thanks for letting me share. I'm sorry if I went over, but that's just a little bit of my bank of video and performance works that I wanted to share tonight.
Thank you so much. You encapsulated a lot in a short period of time. So I think many people tuning in are very familiar with your practice, but for people who are just seeing it for the first time, I think that's a great scope and scale Stevie, would you be willing to jump in next and share some images with us?
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So hi, everyone. My name is Stevie. Thank you for tuning in and just hearing the work that I've been thinking about, the work that I've been making. And yeah, so before I show some images, I kind of wanted to start off by saying a couple of poetic sentences that I wrote. So here it goes. The stains on a t-shirt tell a story, markers of time. A napkin fixes food mistakes, wearing its tasks on its body. Permanent tattoos born at birth, decorating with needleless pigments. So, my practice is centered around exploring and investigating marks. What is a mark? What do marks do? How do marks exist? Are there different ways of perceiving marks? What does it mean to be marked, and who and what is the receiver of these marks? I like to pose these questions in my practice and then sort of answer in different mediums to define what a mark is. I also like to challenge the societal standards of the normal, the beautiful, and the gross, focusing on what we typically cast away. I am really interested in actions that are produced by a body or the absence of a body. And I like to give my objects makeovers that go through a labor of repetitive actions, documentation, and mark making that leave the work glammed up, magnified, and sprinkled with the adject to isolate the language we use around beauty. So my background is actually in makeup. I went to film school focusing on special effects makeup. And this idea of makeup has really been a huge part in my life. And it kind of threads through a lot of the works that I will show in some images later. But I wanted to start off with this baby picture of me that I found like back in 2017. I spent the summer with my parents, and I found a whole bunch of kid pictures of me that I never knew existed in my parents' garage. And so I started like looking at all these images, and I couldn't believe like that was me as a child. Like it was just this weird feeling. And so I was born with a birthmark, and you can see in the image on the left, but as I was working with these images, I started appropriating and like photoshopping my birthmark out. And this body of work really propelled me to start thinking about other marks in the world, like not just birthmarks, but what other marks are there? Are we producing these marks? Are they naturally occurring in the environment that we're in? So these are kind of things that I address in the works that are at Asia Society, is thinking about marks, thinking about stains, thinking about the trace and evidence of an action that was done by a body, done by me. So that's what's kind of going on. So here is a sort of a view of some of the works that are in the space. And I'm going to touch on each one individually. So this one over here is actually an install shot of me installing the napkins. So this work right here is called Untitled Stolen Napkins. And I've been stealing napkins from the restaurants that I eat at since like 2019. And I've been really interested in the stains that are happening on the napkin. And I've been going back and I've been embroidering these food stains in gold thread. So when you go to Asia Society, you'll see like this huge wall of like all these stains and all these napkins. But when you look at it, you don't really know like what it is. Like obviously they're coming from a place, they're dirty, they're gross. But once you approach the napkins, you start to see the really lovely moments of my hand embroidering and covering and concealing these stains. And to me, the gold embroidery thread operates as sort of like a makeup. Like makeup to me is something that covers, it hides, but it also is temporary, but it also beautifies and emphasizes facial features. And so I think to me, that's what the gold thread does for this work. It's just preserving something that's dirty underneath. So here's sort of like an installation shot of the napkins. You can kind of get some close details of some of the embroidery moments that are happening. The next work that I have here is actually one that it's very new. I've been collecting my COVID masks. Well, not COVID masks, but my masks from the pandemic. And this right here is sort of a collection from July, the month of July. And what I've been doing with these disposable masks is I've been really interested in the stains that my makeup leaves behind in the inside of the mask. And to me, the mask represents a day. It's sort of an artifact of what happened during the day, what I wore that day, what I ate that day. The mask kind of holds everything that I did during that day. And so I've been taking these masks and I have been giving them makeovers by embroidering all of my makeup stains in gold. Oh, sorry, not gold, but colorful, very colorful embroidery thread. And to me, the thread, the hanging of the thread, the leftover of the thread and the string and the embroidery thread, it kind of to me represents a body, like it stands in for a body. And I didn't realize this. Like I was thinking about, when you go to a store and you have like the 6 feet stickers that are on the floor, the little decal stickers, I was thinking about like how the giant mounds of thread kind of operate as sort of like 6 feet decal stickers. And so each mask is 6 feet apart from each other to represent social distance. But I was thinking about that and I was like, like that's so interesting. Anyway, so moving on, I have the next piece in here that's called Studio Secretions, the Permanence of the Yellowish Discoloring. And these are my work shirts that I have been embroidering my armpit stains. I've been doing this since like 2019. But I think there's something really interesting that happens when this work exists on a coat rack. Like it kind of becomes this commercialized item in a way. I'm using this ready-made object to kind of put the context of the t-shirts back into its world, its universe that it lives in. But also thinking about the stains that our body produces without really knowing that it produces. Like sometimes I forget that I sweat and the t-shirt kind of becomes this evidence action, that happens over time. The more that you wear the shirt, the more the stain becomes visible. And the gold thread is basically making those stains more visible. Here is a close-up of the t-shirt stains. And so in 2019, I started this project called the Body Mark series. And it's basically this thing where like I carry a small sketchbook with me and I draw and annotate other people's birthmarks that I see in my everyday passing. And so these are actually drawings that have been framed, but the drawings are my notes of other people's birthmarks that I've seen. And I have erased the drawings and then have gone back and embroidered the drawings in gold thread. And those are also at Asia Society. And from that, I started thinking about, this picture really does not do the work justice, but the work, the drawings have become into this really lovely separate part, and it's called, these are like my wire body jewelry sculptures. So I have turned these birthmarks into these really beautiful wire sculptures that have come from craft stores. I'm really interested in craft materials. I really don't know why, but I really am interested in that. So some of these wire sculptures are made with gold lace, gold jewelry beads. Some of the beads are actually from my own necklaces that I don't wear anymore and have deconstructed them and then put back into these wire sculptures. But to me, these wire sculptures are really special to me. They're really great. They're really lovely. And they cast such beautiful shadows on the wall once you visit them in person. Yeah, I mean, I really like this body of work. It's still expanding. It's still growing. I had a few, I think maybe I had like 4 or 5 in my thesis show. And then being at Asia Society, I decided to make more. I've gathered more, I've collected more, and they sort of become these abstract forms that are really lovely, really delicate, and beautiful to look at. And it's so funny when I tell people that they are birthmarks, there's something about the work that then changes. Like it becomes something else, like knowing that these are from other people's bodies and have been turned into these really beautiful objects. It's funny. It's funny that that's what they are. And so, yeah. So
Stevie, I'm glad that you picked that picture to end on, because that gives people extra motivation to come and visit you in person.
yeah.
So thank you for those slides. That's a great introduction. So I think at this point now we'll go into conversation, and Brandon will join us as well so that we can start it off. And again, if you're watching live, we invite you to share your questions with us via the chat, and we'll get to them in turn. But if I could just start by asking both Stevie and Preetika, can you talk a little bit about what the experience has been like working in Asia Society's space, and, you know, on certain days of the week working in public, and a little bit about sort of how you managed or approached the scale of those spaces? And Preetika, can we start with you?
Yeah. So the spaces at Asia Society are gorgeous. They're huge and they're pristine, which for me, I know I struggled with that for the first couple weeks of the residency. Like I brought a bunch of materials that I had not been able to carve out time to work with. Excuse me. But once I kind of just started playing around and putting stuff on the wall, and Bridget was like, just make a mess, don't worry about it. That was really helpful to kind of let go of that. Sorry, y'all, I have like...
You want us to come back to you so you can deal with the frog? Yeah. Stevie, do you mind sharing your insights?
I think I was in the same boat as Preetika's, because I found it really like the space is just so beautiful and so clean, and I didn't know what to do. I think for the first 2 weeks I kind of started to just do things and not really know what it was that I was doing, and I found myself having a really hard time giving myself permission to play like in the space. It took me a really long time to actually like nail something into the wall. But once I did it, I was like, okay, this is fine. But I think it's also a strange dynamic because this space is sort of operating like as a studio space. And since it's so open to the public, like people are coming in, they're seeing your ideas, but those ideas might not be actually like flushed out into the space. So you can only say like, oh, this is what this is going to look like. And then they have to come back and see exactly what you're talking about. And so I think that interaction, those conversations of seeing the artists and their ideas come to life is really fulfilling to the people who are coming into the space.
Yeah, I think I go back to what Preetika had mentioned when we were first talking, is this idea of the space as a laboratory.
Mm.
right? If they get you on a certain day, they see one part of the experiment, but if they come back a week later, the experiment sometimes is totally shifted.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to pick back up after that.
Feeling better?
Yes. I spent a lot of time also prioritizing things that I wasn't able to do in my studio space at home, which is things like reading and kicking back. And so for me, the laboratory is the perfect way of how I thought of it. And as a performance artist, it looks different than working on object-based work. And in a sense, it looks very like not productive because again, I'm just using my body to create, and that's not scheduled creating. It's not like creativity. There you go do the thing, right? So a lot of it for me was spending time like listening to audiobooks and like spending time doing meditative activities, which like I ironed a ton of fabric that I had that I use in my 2D paintings, but I wasn't planning on using them in performance. But just so much of my process is driven by materiality. So it was important for me to just like bring materials and hold them sometimes or organize them sometimes or things like that, which felt really strange to me because I've never been able to have a space to prioritize performance before. And that's why it was a really special experience. I would like to say that as far as the public interaction goes, COVID didn't make that very easy for me. Even though we have mask requirements and things, on public days, I often still did have the divider up where I could, be at a distance with people and feel safe talking to them about the work if they had any questions. And often for me, I turn those questions around back to the visitors because I am in a lab space. So again, I don't really know the answers to the questions. I like to ask questions. It's like as an artist, I think when you run out of questions, that's a problem. So like that's what drives the work is thinking about where I question. So I like to turn those around and ask the viewers, kind of put them on the spot a little bit. So that was interesting, an interesting dynamic.
Thank you both for that.
For each of your works, I would like to talk about how the body becomes a vessel for your works in both your practices. And can you talk about the ways that you incorporate the body in your studio and performance and or video work? Stevie.
So in addition to like making objects, I also do performance-based work. I do video work. My background is in film, so I'm very comfortable with working in front of a camera. I like to use my body as a source of material to produce works. But I think also I like to really like push my body to its limits of doing something, like doing a task like over and over and over. And I like to document sort of like how long I do something for a period of time. And sometimes that comes up in my video works and even in performance-based work. Like I did a performance piece where I layered all of my lipsticks that I owned. And then I took packing tape and I like ripped off all of those layers. So I'm really interested when it comes to thinking about the body as an object, as a subject, and also as a material. And then thinking about the conceptual side of my objects, like those are coming from bodies, like those are deriving from another person's body. And I'm taking that information, decontextualizing it, recontextualizing it, and then it comes out in this like abstract form. So I think the body is always present in my practice, but it may come in different ways, I guess, or it sees itself in different ways. Yeah.
I feel like Stevie said most of everything I also need to say, especially that first part where I think a lot of performance artists probably feel the same way, that your body is the material. And I also like to put that material to test, and push it to its limits, like what you said. So it's like literally the same thing. But for me, it's like I incorporate the materials and see. I think the performance for me is really fun because I am a competitive person by nature. So I compete with myself during performance. And I don't know if that's a healthy relationship. That's probably like a therapist detour. But Brandon, I'm not really sure if you have a more specific question for me, but yeah. I feel like Stevie did that one
Thank you. Well done, Stevie.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think in both of your works, there's a presence of a body without having your body there. Even when I would go and visit your studio, Preetika, I like feel your aura, like the essence of your body, of like your DNA, like the strips of wax or like your pantyhose that you wear and like have on the wall. There's like a presence of a body there. They're like tied up, piled up. The clothing becomes a body. Mm-hmm. And the same with Stevie's work too. Like the articles of clothing that she embroiders, even though there's not a body in the clothes, there's still a presence of the body there.
If I can kind of circle back in on something that's come up a few times, and we can talk about materials and the material choices you're making. You know, people are always asking us like, well, why are they using that for this work? And I think Preetika, just even showing the Sindoor video is a great example of that. And for Stevie, that emphasis on the gold thread, y'all are making such specific choices. Can you talk a little bit for the viewers' sake about how you come to those choices and what their significance is?
Yeah. So again, I grew up. My early career as an artist was spending a lot of time painting, and then I got to a point where the paint on canvas or paper or whatever was not really like driving home the concept. So it became, and I had used I've used fabric and old clothing of my mother's. Usually it's like, it was always just in the house. Mom, give me the stuff that you're not wearing anymore, or my own stuff, my own Indian clothing or Indian American clothing. And that had always kind of been collaged into the work. That still remains. But when it opened up to me that I didn't have to be a painter. Like there was a point in my practice where I really got really inspired by all these other things, which are materials that I've just grown up with. The Sindoor powder, bindis, like, you know, Mom grew up wearing those every day. Women in the community wear those every day. Like ornamental things. But yeah, and then it's exciting to, I don't know. I just think it opens up so much more when you don't limit yourself materially, and you feel so much more of a connection. And Brandon, maybe that's why you feel like a connection. You feel me in the studio, right? Because it's like all of that stuff has been a part of my life for a while. So all my materials are like directly related to me. The yoga mats that I'm always like collecting or sourcing are always used. I don't buy new yoga mats. If I do buy them, they're used, and that's evidenced as well. So that's brings in the others' bodies too.
Stevie, what about you?
Yeah, so my materials always come second. Like I'm very conceptual, so my ideas always start with the concept, and then I try to pinpoint which is the best way to like execute that idea. And materials always become sort of like a trial and error But when it comes to the gold embroidery thread and the properties of the gold embroidery thread, I'm very inspired by the Japanese ceramic technique called kintsugi. When ceramic pieces break and then you put it back together using this gold powder or gold filling, and then that crack makes that piece beautiful again. It's no longer broken. It's not, sorry, trying to say two words together. It's broken, it's no longer fragmented, but it's one piece, and that one piece connected with that gold makes it beautiful. And so thinking about the gold thread like that, really, I start to interpret the gold thread in my practice with covering the food stains, covering the sweat stains. Like those are really gross things. But by covering it with the gold thread, I'm sort of having this conversation between those two worlds, what's charming, what's lovely, what's gross, what's abject. And even with the wire sculptures, like those birthmarks are like such a really like odd topic. And so when I'm working with these wire sculptures, like the gold to me makes these objects more beautiful. They become these body emblems, they become adorned, they become something more. And they kind of are no longer a birthmark and just an object, but they do come from somewhere. Yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to say one more thing, because I thought of it while Stevie, you were talking about basically how your materials like elevate the, like there's an elevation of the gross or whatever. And with my materials, I'm like, I realize I'm often in opposition with like the performances for me typically focus on me against one other material or something like that. Like there's a very like contradictory, or I try to make this relationship again, like testing myself with the material. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good question, Brandon.
I also, I just want to talk, if you could talk, Preetika, about the twister and yoga work and the ways in which the work investigates cultural appropriation and reclamation.
That was not a good idea. Sorry. I was like, is this lighting better? Wrong time. Yes, so I've been basically had this idea a little while ago about how I think that yoga in the West, the yoga industrial complex, as it's called, in the West is basically turned into, I feel like it's reduced to Twister, like the game from, if you know, you know.
If you don't know, look it up.
You aged yourself. If you don't know, you were born a certain year, I guess. But this piece, I'm not even sure if it is going to become a finalized performance piece, so to speak, but for me has been one of those things that I just need to move my body through. And what I did in this space, which if you come, you'll see there's a bunch of mats that have been painted with the twister pattern, but the colors have been mixed up. So typically the twister has like a row of red, a row of blue, but this time they're all jumbled up. And then I've expanded the mat board to be pretty large. And I just go in there and I put this self-timer, it's this like auto spinner that I found. So one can play twister with oneself. Like you don't need someone to flick wow, I just heard what I said. I'm talking about the board game. But you don't need anyone to flick the spinner. You just put it on. And to me, I'm kind of interested in like, am I playing twister or am I doing yoga? Can I hit, where is that like messy overlap and intersection happening? Because Westernized yoga has focused only on one part, but there's like the 8 limbs of yoga where it originates in spirituality, where it originates and is rooted in Hinduism. And Guys, my dog just came home. He's probably about to like attack my screen because I'm in the living room. Sorry. So, hey, yes. Okay.
We have a guest appearance.
Guest appearance. So for me, it's like, what is the point? I start thinking, what is the point of yoga and what is the point of Twister? And when I ask myself what the game of Twister is, it's like, who's the most flexible? Who can stay up the longest? Who can not fall down? Who can the objects of the game. And when I list those answers, those seem in line with a yoga class that you would take here in the United States, which is not at all, there's no like objective in like completion objective. There's no like in yoga. So it's not to be treated like a completion of levels. So for me, practicing that Twister yoga, which I would love if you came this weekend, probably on the last day. I'm planning on kind of like trying out the little, I'll try the performance out during public hours so people can kind of witness it. But it's an interesting space, and I don't know if the performance is necessarily as effective or important for other people as it is for me, honestly. Like, it's very much like one of those meditative things that I can do that allows me to kind of think through the questions that I just kind of posed to you all.
One of the great gifts that I receive from this project is being able to see you all iterate ideas and sort of test and then shift and edit and relaunch. And just going through that process is really awe-inspiring because it takes, fortitude and dedication. And I just wonder if you can talk, each of you, a little bit about this idea of the relationship of labor and time in your work. Because I really see it at play in both of your practices. And maybe Stevie, can we start with you?
Yeah. So labor and time are very, very much embedded in my practice. You might not see it, but it's very much there. Like, thinking about the t-shirts, like, they take a really long time to make. And there's a lot of labor that goes into it. There's a lot of time that goes into it. Although it's a very simple back and forth stitching of embroidering, it's those small stitches are a lot. Even thinking about the napkins, like, prior to getting the napkins, like, I'm sitting at a restaurant, I'm eating, that's an action. I am then wiping and smudging, that's an action. So like, those are little like laborious moments in a sense, but not really. They are everyday gestures. But yeah, I think labor becomes more, I think maybe labor is more of like a practice side. Like, it's one of the processes that happens in my practice. Like, it may not always be seen, but it's always there. And it might not always come across as something that's labor intensive, but I am really interested in how that operates in my practice and like, what does that look like? But as far as time just depends on like the project, I guess. Like, some projects don't take as much time, like the wire sculptures, those are really easy to make, as compared to like something else like the t-shirts or the napkins or the mask. The mask took a really long time to make. I really struggled with making those masks. Like, I had this crazy idea. I was like, I'm going to have a whole month's worth of masks. And then like that changed. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time. Like, I don't have enough time to embroider all these masks. So I had to compromise and go with 2. So yeah, but yeah, labor and time, always a factor.
I think even when you're like documenting every time you're in the studio and the temperature, like,
oh yes,
so interesting. But you're interested in like documentation and tracking that time and place.
Yeah, that is something I tend to forget that I do because it's become such a habit. Like anytime I'm in a new studio space, I have to document the time and the weather of that day. I don't know why. It's just something I do. But thinking about like time and also like record keeping, like that's really interesting to me. Like that's another form of time lapse. Yeah.
I like that you touched on like the invisibility of labor, because I feel like a lot of work is done outside of the studio, especially for me. So I'm going to have another coughing fit again. Hold on one second.
Poor Preetika. These only happen when you have to do webcasts or other public speaking, right? It's like inevitable.
And it's like, well, it's not COVID. This thing has been done, but I have this little like dry patch that whatever, that's not important. It's uncomfortable. So yeah, like it's funny because to me, I think a lot about like we time kept while in the space at Asia Society, right? Like we were required to keep a log of time. And I would sign out and I was like, well, I'm just going to go work on this at home some more, but I don't get to document that time on the sheet. And I'm just going to work on, this in my head, but I'm not going to be able to count that as like people don't get to see that. Right. So, it's just kind of interesting because I think labor and time ties into, capitalism these days, like as an artist. And I think that conversation for me, like I'm very interested and at odds with that conversation. But I think labor, like the hand has typically always been really present in my work too, because I like making, no matter what the material is, the process that happens to the material, the reappropriation of the material, is very important, because that's what I think like art is. That's what visual artists do, right? Like that's what sets us aside from other kinds of artists is making from nothing, right? That's like the beauty. We're creators. Anyway, whatever. I was starting to get real hallmarky or something. I don't know.
I wanted to ask y'all about a question that was brought up from last week's webcast by Prince, and I see your perspective on that. Currently, we are at a time in history where these art institutions are addressing their histories of not featuring works of artists of color, and some are working to change this by changing their exhibitions and their collections to include more people of color and women artists. What are your perspectives on this current moment that we are creating art in as an artist?
This is a complicated conversation, because at least for me, there's a bit of like, it's like, oh, yay, I'm getting more opportunities, but how long am I going to get more opportunities for? Like, there's a bit of mistrust. For so long, we didn't get any opportunities for X, Y, and Z reasons. And then all of a sudden, they're like, hold on. I'm getting complaints. I need to check off all these boxes real quick. You will help me check off that box. That is hard. I see a lot of work being done in that department, and I see it like sustaining, and that gives me a lot of hope. As far as like more marginalized peoples being able to get really great opportunities, and people in the art spaces trying to break down these barriers and structures and in like from within. But I know that that'll take a while to really make a more wider change. But yeah, that's a tough topic. I'm happy. I'm so grateful. I'm like #blessed, but also I'm weary of, and I always have a little bit of like, well, are you only featuring me for this show because it's Pride Month and it's June? And then what am I going to do for the rest of the year? Like, I'm queer all year. So you got to support me these other months too.
# queer all year.
Queer all year. It's like, I don't get to step out of these identities, but people love a month and they love a hashtag.
Yeah. I definitely
love a trend.
Yeah, and especially now with like institutions, like they're almost like trying too hard sometimes. Like as artists of color, you have to be very cautious of these institutions because you don't want them using you as like, or tokenizing you. And I think that's very important. What are your thoughts, Stevie?
Well, I think Preetika said it perfectly. I think that conversation it's like no black and white. Like it's really gray. And it's like, how do these situations get addressed and for how long? Yeah, I mean, I really don't know how to answer it because it's such a complicated topic. And yeah, I mean, I think Preetika said it so well. And I do think that there needs to be a lot of work that needs to happen within the institutions, but we can just hope. Hope for the future. Trying to be optimistic, but it really is a sore topic, I find. Yeah. I wish I could add more, but I think I'm still trying to navigate what that looks like for myself in the world too, like in this art world, and how do opportunities get created, and what does that look like?
Yeah, and does like the perfect institution exist? Is that a real? Yeah, like I don't know.
Bridget seems real convinced on that.
I think that these are just such important questions to be asking and conversations to be had between artists and museum staffers and anybody who's really presenting work, commercial galleries, art fairs. I think if you're not having these conversations, that's probably a problem. So I'm really glad that we have the webcast to at least broach it and open it up for people to join us in the conversation. And I almost can't believe that we're out of time already, because I feel like we could talk for at least another couple of hours. But I guess in closing, just a huge gratitude to Stevie and Preetika for what that they're working on at Asia Society, what they're willing to share with our visitors. And in closing, I don't know if either of you want to weigh in on sort of what's coming up next or things that you're looking forward to as next projects. But I know that everybody in the audience is going to want to tune their antenna into whatever it is that's coming. So if you have anything to share, please let us know.
Yeah. I just want to touch on the vulnerability of a studio space as opposed to an exhibition space. And for me, this residency really brought up some things where I realized how much of a safe space a studio is for an artist and how it feels to share that. And that can be kind of sometimes a hard negotiation. So I appreciate being challenged in that way is what I'm getting to. And I just really want, I want people to come to this closing reception because I'm excited to like have a performance during that time. It'll be like the first half of the public portion, so like 6:30 to 7:15 ish on both of those times. And you can just pop in. There's not going to be like a start or stop time. It's going to just be an ongoing. You can just pop in and out. No, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be late if you arrive at 7. You'll be late if you arrive at 8. But yeah. And then after this, I am going to my work and I are going to Art Basel for the first time in Miami. So I am really excited to like get my gears going for that, and you know, finish up some loose ends in the fall of other projects that I forgot about, and have some stuff in the spring too of next year. So but for me right now, it's like one day at a time as far as the whole life work balance is concerned. I just really wanted to talk about briefly how this experience has been different than like a typical residency. And it's been good. It's been, because wherever there's challenge and wherever there's like tension, there's growth there. So it's been good. So I'm very appreciative and thankful.
I am also very thankful. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Asia Society, for allowing me to be in this space and continuing to work on the ideas and the work that I was making in grad school. I graduated in May, didn't have a studio because I graduated. And so being at Society has really been an amazing opportunity for me to continue to work and continue to sort of resolve some of the ideas, some of the work that I was making in grad school, and then to also have amazing white walls to document the work for my website. Like that's a really plus bonus. But I just have been extremely grateful to just be at Asia Society and getting to know all the other artists, getting to know their practice, their processes. It's been really awesome. I feel like since COVID, I really missed out like on the whole grad school, getting to know your peers, talking with your colleagues, getting to flesh out ideas, and being in the space with everyone else has really been an awesome opportunity to continue to explore these themes and these concepts that are flowing through my work. And so I'm really excited. I really don't know what's happening next after Asia Society. Again, I'm in the same boat, taking a day by day.
I think that's very good advice that both of you are reminding us about. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, day by day.
Yeah.
Truly.
So but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, again, such a huge thanks to both of you, Stevie and Preetika, for sharing insights with us. And Brandon, thank you so much for coming in and doing masterful work as a co-moderator. Really appreciate your questions and your insights too. And of course, thank you to everyone who tuned in the audience and joined us. It's nice to be able to have these conversations together. And I really do hope that you'll make time to stop in before Sunday, which is the last day of the residency project. But to just amplify and echo what Preetika said, please, if you are free, come by Thursday in the evening and join us for the closing reception. Because now that you've heard that the performance is coming and you have a chance to see Stevie's works installed, you really can't miss it. So please be with us for that. And then, of course, all of these programs and projects are made possible by a very generous group of supporters. So I'd like to thank them now. The project is organized at Asia Society Texas, and exhibitions and all related programs there are presented by Nancy C. Allen, Chin Hee Jun and Eddie Allen, and Leslie and Brad Bucher. Major support comes from the Brown Foundation, the Houston Endowment, and the City of Houston through Houston Arts Alliance. Generous funding is also provided by the Anchorage Foundation of Texas, the Clayton Fund, Texas Commission on the Arts, National Endowment for the Arts, Wortham Foundation, and Agnes Sue Tong, PhD, and Oscar L. Tong. United Airlines is our official airline partner, and funding is also provided through contributions from the exhibition's patron circle, a dedicated group of individuals and organizations committed to bringing exceptional visual art to Asia Society, Texas. I would also like to thank my colleagues, Alana, Liz, and Caitlin, who are making all of the magic happen behind the scenes. And again, a final thanks to all three of you, Stevie, Preetika, and Brandon, for being with us this evening. Really appreciate your time.